Good morning, Rockland County, Clarkstown in particular. It's Clarkstown Supervisor George Hoehmann for our monthly installment of HoehmTown Happenings. Delighted to be on. I'm happy to have Will operating our board today and taking our calls. And for that matter, we will be taking your calls this morning at 845-429-1700, 845-429-1700. I do have a guest speaker that we'll be bringing on momentarily. I just want to give a quick update on a couple of holiday events that are taking place within the town of Clarkstown, and then we're going to get into introducing our guest speaker. So, coming up, we're into the holiday season, obviously. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and it's hard to believe that it's December 1st, and we're into the final 31 days of the year. And we've got a jam-packed schedule of a lot of holiday events that are coming up. And first and foremost, we have our candy cane hunt and our tree lighting that will be taking place on Monday the 12th over at the historic Congers train station in Congers. That's a town-sponsored event. We'll have opportunities for pictures with Santa Claus, and that's taking place on the 12th over in Congers, the evening of the 12th, from I believe 5:30 to 7:30. It's a candy cane hunt, and as I said, there'll be an opportunity for pictures with Santa Claus. And I'm really excited about working with Councilman Graziano in that area. This is kind of new for us. We're fully decorating the outside area of the train station with a nice light display, and there's a beautiful Christmas tree that'll be decorated there as well. In addition, a couple of days later, on the 14th, we're going to be kicking off our Winter Wonderland, and that'll be taking place over at Gilchrist Park, also with a menorah lighting as well that'll be taking place there, I believe, on the first day of Hanukkah on the 18th. And again, we're delighted that we're coming into the end of the year with a lot of these holiday opportunities and celebrations. And of course, I'm going to ask everybody to please continue to sign up for the Town of Clarkstown YouTube channel and to follow us on Facebook. Finally, I do want to just recognize a couple of things that were important to the Town of Clarkstown and are really indicative of some of the positive leadership that we've done. Over the last 30 years within the Town of Clarkstown, we're a pretty affluent town. In fact, we are blessed being the 10th largest town out of 932 towns in New York State by population, with just under 90,000 people. In fact, Clarkstown was one of 3 towns in Rockland County to actually have population grow. As people know, New York State is experiencing a drain of people that are moving out, and New York State's population has been continuously dropping by percentage, and that's why we've actually been losing congressional representation over the last number of years. So it's a positive sign to see that our population actually grew by about 2,000 people. More importantly, we have 60% of the commercial ratables of Rockland County located right here in Clarkstown. And it's not just, the Palisades Mall and the shops at Nanuet, but as you can see from following our Facebook pages and the town YouTube channel, there isn't a week that goes by that I'm not cutting a ribbon on a new business that's opening up somewhere within the town. And we're blessed that people are confident in reinvesting in Clarkstown. I think part of the reason that people are confident in reinvesting and opening a business in Clarkstown is not just the high quality of services, but frankly what we've been able to do and accomplish over these last 7 years while I've been supervisor. Over the last 30 years, the town of Clarkstown, in the 30 budgets that have been put forward and operated and managed by the town, less than half of those budgets actually were balanced, and the town was bleeding money. In fact, my predecessor, before I took office, and it's not a knock on him, it's just the facts, was in office for 11 years. Only 2 of the years that he was in office did the town actually have a balanced budget, and we actually had a budget that was in the black. We had all types of issues we had to fix with our budgets. Well, I'm very pleased to say that this will now be the 4th consecutive year in a row, barring any unforeseen catastrophe, in which the town will actually be in the black and building reserves. And there's a recognition of that. The town is actually moving ahead with our new bond rating, which is a positive rating. And I'll conclude with this. We also have the New York State Controller's Office gave us high marks as well. The town actually has a new bond rating, and it's the highest of any municipality within Rockland County. And it's in recognition of the hard work we've been doing these last 7 years. So I want to thank all the staff that were part of that. And with that, I want to pivot over to our guests. So my guest on our program is Louis Hoehmann, who's an author with local ties. He really has a very fascinating life story. So Louis is a Bronx kid whose family is from Sicily, a successful businessman, and upon retirement at the tender age of 57, becomes a prolific author. It's just your typical ho-hum life story. So I want to welcome Lou Hoehmann to the program. Lou?
Hi, George. Good morning.
Thanks so much, Lou. I really, very happy to have you on. Now, before we got started, Lou, I just want to give a shout out to all the guys over at the Cigar Club. That's how you and I met. They're a great group of guys, and I know probably a number of them are listening, so shout out to those guys. And just a reminder, folks can call in at 845-429-1700. We'll be taking your calls a little bit later in the segment. We're going up to 10 o'clock. So, Lou, where in the Bronx are you from?
Actually, I'm from what they call now the Belmont section, around Arthur Avenue. I lived in Crotona. I went to St. Martin of Tours Elementary School, and then we moved. I went to Blessed Sacrament School and then to St. Raymond's High School. But I have to tell you, George, Rockland County is in my heart. And the reason I say that is after high school, without really good grades and with no money, I wound up at Rockland Community College. And I have to tell you, that really helped define my life and shape my life. I went to 2 other colleges after that, Montclair State, and then I went to grad school at Fairleigh Dickinson. And Rockland is in my heart because it was the best school I went to. And when you talk to kids who say, I only go to Rockland or I only go to Bergen, I always encourage them because I had a pretty successful life, a successful business career. And as you said, I don't want to use the word prolific, but I'm not even sure I know how to spell that. But certainly I've written 5 books, and some of them have been very well accepted.
So Lou, how many books have you written, so far?
Actually, on my 21st right now. And I started writing when I was 58, I guess. And I'm now, this month, I'm 72. So I still have a few left in me, I hope.
Well, they always say that everybody's got a book in them. They just have to discover how to do it. But, what made you want to take up writing, at that age?
I always had a creative flair. I did so poorly in if you looked at my grades in high school and college, I did well because it wasn't math and science oriented. But I was so bad in tests and these standardized tests and so forth. I mean, my grades were so poor in math and science, but I always had a flair and a want to do things creatively. So when I got to Montclair, I got into the fine arts program and did television and radio work, and I found what I really liked. Unfortunately, I didn't pursue that in my career. I was a business major, and I worked in the oil industry for, 40 years or so to raise my family. I live in New Jersey, northern New Jersey now, and I raised my family, and I said, one day I'm going to write a book, and I wrote a crappy book, my first one, which people still like, but I don't. And I just went from there, and I started doing one at a time, and one or 2 a year, and I love the process. It's terrific for me. I reinvented myself, if you will.
Well, I want to get into a couple of your books, in a minute, and just a reminder for folks that if you have a question for Lou, during this segment, we'll start taking them in about 10 minutes, and that's 845-429-1700, 845-429-1700, right here on 1700 WRCR radio. But Lou, before I get into that, you've obviously developed over time as a writer. You've been writing now 14, 15 years,
Right.
And you're into your 21st book. Tell us how you've evolved as a writer.
Well, I'm what's called, some people call me a crossover writer. So I write mainly fiction, but I've written true crime, a couple of true crime books. They're not my favorite, but they sell. And I'm not all about money because I don't make money on the books. I made my money in my life, so it's not a money grab. I've written a young adult book called Zip Code that I actually go around to schools and libraries and speak to children about it. Children meaning from 12 to 18, young adult. And it's one of my favorite books because it comes from when I lived in the projects in the Southeast Bronx, and how you should not be defined by where your zip code is, and that's the premise of the book. And I love that book. And I've written some other things, historic fiction on a book from the town that my family was from in Sicily, and the young boys who were forced to be miners in the sulfur mines, and the horrible conditions they lived under. Someone asked me just recently, it might have been you, George, what's my favorite book? And I said, I can't. How many children do you have, and who's your favorite child? I can't say what my favorite is. I might think it, but I really can't say it. But because they all mean a lot to me, they're a piece of my life. Right now, my favorite book is going to be the book I'm writing about we can't call them gypsies anymore. That's a pejorative, about the Romany people. And that'll be a fiction book. But the process is basically fiction. I do an outline. I do several outlines, and then I sit down and say, okay, when am I going to start this thing? And then I have a goal of a certain amount of words a day, and I don't stop until the book is written, the manuscript is written, and then the hard part starts. You know, the editing, the proofreading, which I've been criticized about because I'm not a great proofreader, and the people I hire to proofread don't necessarily do a good job.
Right. Well, you know, it's a lengthy process that you're describing. You talk about a target of a number of words. You know, what is that? Typically, how many words would you want to try and pump out a day? How many pages?
Well, I do 1,500 words a day, no matter what. In Saturdays, Sundays, I don't take a day off. If I do 2,500 one day, and I don't stop and say I'm going to only do 500 today. I keep trying for that 1,500. So I could write a book in 40 days, 50 days, but that's just first pass. It takes 6 months to write a book. It really does, because there's a lot of research involved. You just don't come and sit down off the top of your head and start writing. I mean, there's a book I wrote called Shonda, and it takes place up in Rockland County. I mean, I've done a lot of work on that book, and it's actually I wrote it at the Cigar Lounge at the Nanuet Social Club. I wrote the whole book there, and with the help of friends of mine, it's about. May I say what the book is about?
Yeah. So I was actually going to get to it because it's really an interesting book, and as you said, it takes place in Rockland, and I love the description on your website. COVID-19 global pandemic wasn't the only reason that the Orthodox community in Rockland County was in crisis. A deranged lone wolf sniper decides to prey on unsuspecting Hasidic Jews for reasons only known to him. Serial killer experts, Vic Ganella and his partner Rachel Ruiz are recruited to stop the carnage. So tell me about Shonda and tell us a little bit about it. But I also want to then learn about your research and how you got that topic, and then how your research, because I think it was pretty extensive, the people you talked to.
Oh yeah, everybody from the police departments in Rockland County to undertakers and people at Hatzola, and also some friends of mine, like one of the members of the club, Barry Work. Barry is of the Jewish religion, and he's very attuned to things that are in his lifestyle in his community. And he gave me an enormous amount of help and brought in another fellow. His name escapes me. I'm sorry. But I learned an awful lot about the Hasidim, and in no way I have to preface this by saying in no way is it at all anti-Semitic. I mean, I am not anti-Semitic. I grew up I was a Shabbos goy in the 1950s. My mother would punish me if I took money from our Jewish neighbors. But I have to tell you that the book, the research that I did, I mean, some friends of mine who were Jewish, not Hasidic, but Jewish, said, "Wow, Lou, I didn't know that about my religion." That's how much research I did putting that book together. And it's about a young man who's a little deranged, and his father is in contact with some Hasidim through business, some Hasidim in Muncie, and the old man gets the COVID and dies. He's the only person left in this deranged kid's life, and he thinks that these people killed his dad. So he's going to take revenge with his rifle because his father taught him how to hunt. And I'm not going to tell you the end of the book, but Vic and Ella and Raquel are recurring characters of mine. That's the sixth book of a series that starts with Intercession. And if anybody wants to read that, I would suggest that Intercession is the first book to read because it lays out their relationship. But I really had a good time writing Shonda. I really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping to do more things in Rockland County. I really enjoy the county.
So aside from all the research that you've done on these books, and by the way, I thought the zip code book that we had talked about in preparation for the interview, that's just, in my mind, it's a brilliant way to approach things. Literally, looking at a book and looking at a zip code and writing a book that is accessible for young people. That tells them, you don't have to be defined by your zip code, whether, whether you're coming from a poor area or a rich area, whatever it is. Literally, we have too many people that, are looking to teach young folks to either agree to be victims or to allow them to be victims of circumstance. And it's a book that, from the sound of it, really talks about your own ability to have, through your own self-reliance to move yourself forward within life, and not to allow not just yourself, but others to judge you based on where you've come from. I think that's a great message for young people here. So
George. I was the impetus of the book came from a Spanish girl. In 1964, I graduated from Blessed Sacrament School, and she was 4 years behind me in my brother's class. And she was poor. She lived in a project. She was a woman, and she was Puerto Rican. So there's strike three back in 1964. Well, that woman went on to go to a great high school, Cardinal Spellman High School. I couldn't get in the front door. She then went. I really couldn't, unless I was delivering a pizza for my uncle. And then she went to a little school on scholarship called Princeton University, and then on to. She went then to Yale University Law School, and today the project she lived in is named after her, the Sonia Sotomayor houses. So if Sonia can overcome all that negativity and become a Supreme Court justice and have a project named after her, that's the kind of inspiration I had to write that book.
Yeah, that's again, it's incredible. In fact, I often read in the schools within the town, and I always buy a book. I try and get it. I'll often go to Books and Readings in Norwood, New Jersey, because they will have a series of authors that come in, and I'll get books. I'm usually reading to the younger grades, but I do get into the middle and the high school, and I'll get them. I'll typically get them signed by the authors. And now, knowing that you've done zip code, certainly when I get into some of the middle and high schools later this academic year, I'll make sure I pick up a couple of your books, have you autograph them, and I always donate them and leave them with the class, with the school, and hope try and leave a message, positive message for the students. But Lou, before we get to,
I'd be thrilled to donate the books to you.
Thanks so much. So before we get to or any callers, I got a couple of other quick questions that we had really kind of talked about, and hopefully, I wish we had a little more time to delve into some of these. But I thought it was fascinating in preparation for this interview when you and I were talking, and you were telling me literally how many books are actually published each year in the United States. Typically, how many books are actually sold, the ways in which books are actually published, and how much an author would actually realize from a book. Could you kind of run through some of that for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. It's a fascinating topic. So there are 300,000 new titles. That's what they call books. new titles a month that are published in the United States. That's over 3 million books per year. So the average person who decides they want to be a writer and they want to write their life story or a great story about something that happened in their lifetime, they write the book and they publish the book. It's called POD, print on demand. They go through one of these companies called like Book Babies or Ingram. There's a bunch of companies that will produce books for you, and some much smaller companies as well. And then they try to distribute the book on various platforms like Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, where all my books are. And then all of a sudden they want to become the next Dan Brown. Well, the average book in its lifetime sells 200 copies. 200.
200 copies, which is, it's just astounding. Like, but you're, literally, I'm thinking back. There was a lot of criticism that was heaped upon. There was actually some investigations on our former Governor Cuomo, and I remember he got in advance to write a book, and I think in the end he literally sold about 7,000 or 9,000 copies.
That's nothing.
Which is nothing, and literally I think he was paid a several $1 million advance for it. Literally,
I didn't know that, George. Thanks for telling me that. I'll use it in my discussions. But I got to tell you that I've had books that sold 10,000 copies, and that's still not a lot because you're only making about $1.50 if you're lucky. Sometimes you make 35 cents on a book as far as your commission goes or your royalty goes. If people buy through my website, of course, I have more control, and no one's taking a piece of it. So I would make a couple of bucks at that rate. But most people want to buy on Kindle, and I love Kindle. I use it myself. And the commission or the royalty to the writer is very, very small. So you're not making any money.
Right. So Lou, I want to get to any calls that we might have, but just,
Sure.
Before we get to that, I just two of your books, without tipping your hand, but two of your books are going into script form and are being considered, by major production companies to be movies. Correct?
Yeah. Intercession, which has just been finished. The script has just been finished by A.J. Enriquez in Los Angeles. He's a script writer, and he is presenting that in the next few weeks to two major studios. Fingers crossed, everybody. And there's a few bucks to be made there, but not millions. It's not going to change my life, but listen, it's a labor of love, not a labor of money. I did the money thing. And my book, Bessa, which almost got made, and then there was some problems with the funding of the book. So those two books are on the shelf to be made into feature films, hopefully in 2023.
And these are, I know you shared offline, and we won't share it here, but these are not, small entities that are considering, doing these. So it's
no, I can't mention them. I'm on contract, but they're major, well-known names.
Right. Well, we're excited for you, Lou, and we'll have to have you back, to talk, further on that. But why don't we do this? We only got about 6 minutes left, and
Yeah.
Will, do we have any callers on the line, Will?
At the moment, we do not.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
We got. All right, so we'll leave.
They're too enamored with your discussion.
We'll put the number out there, 845-429-1700, 845-429-1700, and Will just let us know if anybody jumps in. But that's great because I got a few other questions, Lou, that I wanted to kind of go through with you as well. When we were going through this and talking about it, I loved, when you were talking about Shonda and just the research. But, what advice would you have for somebody who's thought about becoming a writer? I mean, obviously you just plunged into it. And as you said, you're not doing this for love of money. You're a very successful businessman. You're essentially, kind of semi-retired. With you kind of pivoted, and this is something that you love to do, and you've written 20 books. You're into your 21st now. There are probably people in our club, jokingly, they probably haven't read 21 books, but it's a remarkable thing that you've done. But what advice would you have for somebody that has maybe thought about writing short stories or writing a book? What should they do? How should they start? How should they go about it?
Question, George, which is asked me many times. My advice is do it. Just write. Don't worry about the syntax. Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about the spelling. Just put your thoughts down. Have a topic that you're passionate about. And if you're going to write fiction, show, don't tell. If you're going to write text, tell, don't show. But just do it. Write it. Keep writing. And then you could do your self-editing and try yourself and try again. And then get a mentor who you trust, who will give you the right advice and not try to blow smoke and tell you what direction you're going in and if it's good or not. And don't give up, because to be a writer, the skin has to be very thick, elephant thick, because the criticism you get. I mean, if I get 100 reviews on Amazon, and I get one bad one, it's the one bad one that makes me sleepless, because it's a passion. So that's the advice I would give. Just do it. I mean, just write. Sit down and just start from page one.
Well, and as you're kind of moving forward with your writing, you've kind of hit a niche in terms of some of the areas that you're writing on. I mean, as you said, you're doing kind of fiction. You've got this series that's really kind of into the criminal aspects and crime fighting and with some recurring characters. And then Shonda, which I think we just kind of scratched the surface on it, but that was just kind of fascinating. What gave you the inspiration to write Shonda?
I was going to write a book about the Amish and do a crime book about the Amish people, and then I'm sitting there studying about the Amish, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, wait a minute, we have a sect of people right here in Rockland County who are the Hasidim, who are different than most Americans. So why do I have to go over to Pennsylvania and spend my time there when it's in my backyard? And I went into New Square, and I went to that Evergreen. Is it called Evergreen on Route 59?
Yeah, Evergreen, the major supermarket there.
Yeah, and I went in there and I bought some food, and I'm an Italian kid, and I walked around and asked advice, and the people were very nice to me. The women wouldn't talk to me much because they're not supposed to, but the men they welcomed me. I told them I was a writer, and they were fascinated by that. And then they would show me different foods and tell me different customs, and they welcomed me. And as a matter of fact, the first murder takes place on Route 59 right outside of Evergreen. So I got a pretty good visual of that place. And I spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, but a couple of days driving in New Square and in Murphy, where some of the murders take place. It was just I had a really good feeling about what I was doing.
That's great. In terms of just the research, though, I mean, you got to talk to a lot of people. I mean, you're doing a lot of research. How much research would you do for a book? I mean, it's it sounds like it's months, and it's talking with like a wide variety of people, reading.
Yeah, in terms of man hours, it's at least 4 weeks. It's at least 4 weeks of research. Thankfully we have the internet now with Google and so forth, but there's other things you have to do. You have to talk to the people. Like right now I'm trying to get with some gypsy organizations, and they're very secretive people, to get to know the feeling of what's going on. I can tell you one of my books is about organ piracy, and I actually watched a organ transplant at Presbyterian Hospital to get the feel of what was going on. So that's the kind of research I do.
Cool. So, Lou, we got about a minute left, why don't we just have you give your website where people can find out about you and order some of your books?
Thanks, George. It's Louis, Louis, Romano, Romano, author.com, or you can get them anywhere on any of the book platforms like Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com.
Well, Lou Romano, you've been a great guest, great friend. Thanks so much. Folks, enjoy the holiday season, and we'll talk to you next year on our next edition of HoehmTown Happenings. Thanks, everybody.
because I'm happy. Clap along.